This is the Modern Vibes on Vibes Radio.
All right, now in studio we got a very special guest, anaitwa Jenny NJUKI. She's the Africa Program Manager at Malaria UK, and we're going to be talking about resources, mobilization, and partnerships. Jenny, welcome to Morning Vibes.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Me, I'm even surprised that people wake up on a holiday to come for interviews.
It was a struggle. I wouldn't even lie.
Yeah, did you leave the pilau and any cooking?
It was literally a very big struggle. I was like, oh my God, okay. Alarm, snooze. All right, I just have to jump out.
But you know what's even a crazy struggle, Sheila? The fact that sisi kama vijana, we're never really in the conversation, especially when it comes to setting up agendas and policy documents. Now, we've been talking about the Youth Policy Dialogue Forum. Go down. Actually, we'll be telling you, as we go on, we'll be telling you about the regions and Izima Forum stuff is going to happen. But ukiangalia hizo manifestos for all these politicians, Hustler Nation, Ganja Nation, Azimio, La Umoja, Nini, where do you feature as a youth?
Where do you feature as a youth? That's a big question.
Where do you feature? And if you don't, mbona unavotiama, guys? So it's very important for us to actually develop this policy document for Mavijana. And we've been talking about mambo ya education, mambo ya issues of health that affect. These are some of the issues that she's supposed to bring forward to the particular specific leaders, especially kwa county hapo, so that they can actually help you develop a solid policy document and it affect maisha yako and for future generations.
Now, one thing that is definitely an issue in the country is malaria. Right?
Yes.
Malaria. In fact, there was a time guys used to call me Malaria Queen.
Oh, really?
Why?
The Queen of Malaria.
Malaria drugs.
Wow. Malaria Queen. Why? Because I remember when I did Big Brother 2010, we did a project and they did the data on how malaria bado ina bumburusha hapa mazi. Crazy how people are dying from malaria.
Oh yes, it is.
And so when I came back, I set up an NGO for this particular work. Malaria is one of the is it the main killer in Kenya?
It's actually the oldest disease in humankind.
Imagine.
And then it's oldest. It's a dinosaur, literally. And then in Africa, actually, we have 96% of malaria cases from Africa.
Imagine.
What that means is that we lose our child every minute. So you guys can imagine how long you've been here and how many children have died.
Yeah.
So it's a killer disease. And the worst and the interesting thing about malaria is that it's preventable and treatable. So that means that people don't have to die from malaria.
What are the social economic impacts of malaria? Especially, I want us with focus on young, the youth. What are the social economic impacts on the daily lives of Kenyans?
Yeah. So I'm going to take you back to where I've just said a child dies every minute. So you can imagine you're a young mother and children that are most at risk are children below the age of 5. Right. So what that means is that already as a mother, you've given birth to this little one in this world where you're probably hustling or you're trying to make it. Do you know what I mean? You're literally trying to survive. And then now you're being told that you have to deal with malaria on top of having this one child. The child has not even gotten to 5. So getting this child to beyond 5 is a journey, a journey of every mother. So you either want to have a mosquito net and you probably can't afford a mosquito net, or your county government hasn't given you a mosquito net. What does that mean? Or probably you're pregnant, you're an adolescent girl. We've just seen the issues around teenage pregnancies rising. How many adolescent girls know that they need to take what you call the intermittent preventive treatment for malaria? I mean, even I was pregnant the other day. I didn't know about IPTP, but you need to take it. So you're a mom, you're a young mom, and you're hearing about all these issues, and then you're probably also looking for a job, and if you're a mom that is probably working as a day bag, for example, because again, malaria haiko Nairobi. Sometimes they say we're talking about malaria in endemic regions, in places that it's hard even to afford a meal a day. So it's almost deemed as a poverty disease. So you're trying to get a job, you have to miss work because you have to take care of your children, and mothers are caregivers. So you end up missing work because you have to take care of your children or your husband who has malaria. So in terms of social economic impact, you'd then talk about the numbers of days lost from school in terms of children. You talk about the numbers of days lost in terms of work. We talk about 117 billion that is lost annually in Africa
$170 billion lost because
of malaria.
Now, in terms of ukisikia hayo maneno kwamba malaria is one of the oldest disease yenye tumekuwa tukidili nayo. Remember places kama America walikuwa na malaria, lakini somehow wali manage ku clear hii kitu. So who fights malaria in our country?
Who fights malaria?
Yeah.
So interestingly, President Uhuru, His Excellency President Kenyatta, is actually what you call the Africa Leaders Malaria Champion. So I'm going to start from the very top level, because he is the chairman for Africa for malaria, and he's done a good job, I must commend, because he's put up in Kenya what you call the Malaria Youth Army. And the Malaria Youth Army was launched about 2021. What they're supposed to be doing is really working together with the National Youth Council, the National Youth Service, to support in terms of like draining the drainages within our homes, clearing, all those spaces, and helping even in the net distribution. So in terms of political goodwill, you'd say in Kenya we have great political goodwill. And then we have, what you call... So that's from a national level. And then when you go to the county levels, you need to ensure that malaria is within what you call the county integrated development plans, because that's where the budget comes from. So if malaria is not an issue within your CIDPs, then how will your government, your county government, care about malaria? So then you talk about national political goodwill from our leaders, and then you're not talking about resources. You need resources. In Kenya, we have a gap of 24 billion when it comes to malaria.
As in, we could be fighting it, but we are lacking 24 billion.
We're lacking 24 billion. And that's because for a very long time, we've also really sort of relied on donor aid for a long time.
So I know that USAID, UK aid, through the President's Fund, is where we get most of our funding.
Yes, we do.
Right? But there's a gap. So where do we get the other resources?
Great. So what happened is that President Kenyatta also set up what you call the End Malaria Council. This is private sector coming together to support malaria elimination. So right now we have an End Malaria Council in Kenya that is led by private sector. What we're trying to do is, what are the alternatives ways of funding malaria? So we're saying, as Kenya, as Africa, let us not heavily rely on international aid. Let us own this problem to have our own solutions. So how to do that is then we're having the End Malaria Council, which is in terms of raising domestic resources. So here in Kenya, it's chaired by, his name is Chris Kitonga. He's part of the Good Life. He's a founder at Good Life and sous chef. So he's running that in terms of private sector, bringing together the Kenya Private Sector Association, whether it's media, whether it's a creative industry. And then we have Malaria No More UK, where I work as the Africa Program Manager. And what has happened is that we've launched what you call the Zero Malaria Campaign Coalition. Do you remember the days of HIV? When every ad, everywhere you went, to Metril, all those ads that were there in terms, HIV was on your face. How can we get malaria to that space where, when we lost legends like Benjamin Ayimba from malaria, great rugby player, why should we be losing people from a preventable and treatable disease? So we need people, we need us as Kenyans to own the problem, to say, listen, we don't need to have a preventable and treatable disease because we don't know what's the next pandemic beyond COVID-19.
That's the thing. And as we move forward with this conversation, we know very well that Jenny NJUKI, by the way, you work for the Africa Program Manager, you're at the Malaria No More UK.
Yes.
So there's also an initiative that you have in partnership with the National Youth Council. Yes, talk about that and what it entails, basically.
Okay. So what we're doing currently with the National Youth Council is to ensure that youth understand malaria. Because, as we've said, it's preventable, it's treatable. How do we get better healthcare for all?
Yes.
So what we're doing with the National Youth Council, we've partnered with the National Youth Council in terms of the county integrated development plans. We're waiting for the next government in August. So we don't know who that is.
Yes.
So whether that's...
Are you sure you don't know?
We don't know. We don't know. So we're waiting for the next government, and what we're going to try to do is that we're going to work very closely with the Council of Governors. And this is why we're going to work with the Council of Governors, is just to ensure that malaria is prioritized and it remains a top agenda. It remains a big issue because it is a big issue.
It is a huge issue.
Kenya's current rate of malaria is at 6%. which is not bad,
Yeah.
which is great. But we're still far away from elimination. We can't remove our foot from the pedestal right now.
Yeah.
And so with the county integrated, working with the COG, we're going to now enable youth, empower them to be better advocates, to be stronger advocates in what they do, so that even at the county levels, in terms of like public participation, one of the key issues they're talking about is malaria elimination, especially in the endemic counties.
Yeah.
We have about 14 endemic counties out of 47.
Yeah.
But again, this year, we saw outbreaks of malaria.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Means that there's a possibility of resurgence.
Yeah.
And that would take us steps back in terms of our journey this far in Kenya, in terms of progress.
So youth, of course, under the National Youth Council, being advised or brought into the fight, to get to zero malaria, what will that entail?
That would entail good leadership, political goodwill, and that would entail resource mobilization. That would entail allocation to malaria, literally from the counties to the national government. And interestingly, Azimio has malaria. UDA, Kenya Kwanza, has malaria as well, prioritized as an issue. I haven't checked the roots one, but
I can tell you what's priority there.
Please tell us. I hope malaria is one of it. But what you're seeing already is also is the leadership.
Yeah.
How the continuation and leveraging on the political goodwill that exists in Kenya to ensure that we actually reach zero malaria. It is possible, and literally zero malaria starts with you, with me, with us all here, and us owning it, and us creating that awareness, and us saying that we cannot die from a preventable and treatable disease.
For those who are seated and going like, why should I care?
Why?
Yeah.
When a child dies, when you put a child's face, when you wake up every morning and you open your eyes and see your child, and imagine that child has to die in the next minute, then you should care. You should care, because that's not the youth of today, but that's the youth of tomorrow that has been taken away, that Kenya has continued to be robbed from people that would have been the next presidents, game changers of our country. Of course you should care.
And how can youth be a part of this conversation, and also kuchangia tu yani, especially now since this amazing initiative is going to the ground, courtesy of NYC, UNDP, and Kenya Daima. As a youth, because probably I've been affected, I come from a malaria endemic area, how can I be part of this conversation? How can I share my ideas, my recommendations?
So what you do here in Kenya is you log into the Malaria Youth Army website. There's a Malaria Youth Army website.
Yes.
You join the movement of the Malaria Youth Army website, because that is how we're working as a malaria community in terms of engaging youth, is working through the Youth Army. You get information from the Malaria Youth Army website, and you get to be a part of it, and we will, the Malaria Youth Army team will reach out to you in terms of how you can be involved in your community as a great advocate.
Love it. Thank you so much for making the time this morning to come speak to us. Of course, NJUKI, Africa Program Manager, Malaria No More. And remember, this is all courtesy of National Youth Council that is at the forefront of bringing issues youth to not just pandering but policy. And one of the major issues that definitely needs to be there in terms of policy is how do we end malaria for a healthier, better nation. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you.
I'm going to play your song right after I pay some bills, some Conscience Jah Love Me.
Awesome.
Radio playing music for the people. Morning Vibes, where you are the MVP. No negative vibes.
Things fail. You remember that Jah loves you.
All day, every day.
Alafu nasema washo. Nimewasho maze, Jah love me.
Yeah, man, Jana to like, but you also have to also love him. Yeah, you have to go down on your knees and say, Saja, I appreciate you for all your blessings in my life.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I love for society to talk about relationship.
Jah love me, Jah love me.
Well, speaking of love, my question is, tumekuwa tukiwauliza since last week, wewe kama youth man, are you ready to have your opinions heard? That's the question we're asking. Sasa hizo manifesto zote umesikia, umekuwa ukicheki ukisoma left, right and center.
Manifesto this.
Where do you think you feature? And if you don't feature, then why are you voting for this politician?
That's a question.
Unacheki. So now we've been touching on a couple of things. We've touched on health, we've talked about education, we've talked about the economy, and today we're talking about resource mobilization.
Resource mobilization.
If you have an idea huko nje bana, utatoa wapi kakiru ya to manifest your idea?
Yeah, and we got Jenny.
Yes.
That's the big question.
Yes.
A young person ako kwa hiyo area yake and ameona kwamba hapa hii shida inakuanga hii mtaro bana, tukiweka nini na nini hapa hii kitu itakuwa sorted. But sasa anashanga sana nianzie wapi na hiyo idea. How do they go about it?
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
So I think resource mobilization is quite interesting because I think young people are brilliant and Kenyans young people are smart. And we make 70% of our population, but we also need to ensure that we are making it even in terms of life. So how do we ensure that our ideas move from just ideas to actually action? And sometimes the only way to do that is ensuring that you're in the right spaces. But how do you even get to know about what are the right spaces really? And I mean, there are different ways to sort of like fund your ideas. One, here in Kenya, we have the government who have given opportunities.
Different funds.
Exactly. There's the access to government procurement opportunities, which is supposed to be almost like 30%. And then we have the youth fund. And we have all these entities that have been created. In terms of international sort of like space, you have donors. And right now, I'm going to tell every young person, youth are such a big conversation in every room. And it's not just Kenya. I'm telling you, in terms of like in the donor space, in the international space, without meaningful youth engagement, people are missing even funding. You're being told no. So how are you going to really how are you really going to ensure that you sort of like be intentional in terms of actually driving the youth agenda within your idea? And so because youth is such a big thing, youth have opportunities. So there is hope. There is funding outside there. There are big donors like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that are very, very keen on funding. So the idea is really get your thoughts together, get your ideas, ask yourself, what is the change I want to see? Because that's the biggest question.
You know, the thing about youth though, when it comes to these engagements, when they have like an idea and everything, and then they're thinking, "Hey, Maze, so I didn't even know there's some money from the county, for example." I mean, what are some of the challenges? Why is it that youth are slow to actually go for these resources?
Bana wewe Kevin na kizungu yako niuliza swali.
Sawa. Mbona unadhani do you understand Kiswahili?
Naongea Kiswahili.
Basi tuongee Kiswahili. Mbona unadhani mavijana wanakuanga slow sana, wanafeel saa zingine hata wako intimidated kwenda ku access hizi funds. Unapata guys wako na idea fiti, have an amazing business idea, ama some sort of CBO, but when it comes to partnership resources, nothing.
Two things. One, I think the success stories. How many success stories of youth are put out there in terms of youth who actually get funding? How many? The success stories. And then it's a challenge to you guys, Vibes Radio. Put out more success stories.
Hii platform inakuanga hapa. Hii on my grind. Hapa ndio hapa kila siku tunakuanga na wasee wako na success stories.
Amazing. Amazing. So already that's the best thing. We need to highlight more stories to encourage more young people. Because there's we saw during COVID. Who was that guy that, you know, he came up with this great beds idea and stuff like that? But where is he now? Why aren't we hearing these stories? For us, it's, you know, when this, I think youth really want to be encouraged by seeing this more of the success stories. So as media, we need to see how we could amplify that. But as government, we need to see how we can get more resources to them. But not just resources. I think resources are there in terms of, you know, they've put the structures and the systems. But how many youth know that these things exist? Exactly. And that is what National Youth Council is trying to do by ensuring that they're bringing partners to under each county, 47 counties, ensuring that tunaongea historia do na tunaongea venye watapata hizi pesa. So it's really about, one is the amplification, but second is how they get to know that there's, you know, where the funding is, what are the platforms that they can tap into to get these resources.
Lakini resources ziko. So
both national and both global.
Yeah.
So don't limit yourself to Kenya only. trust me, outside there, everybody is demanding for youth engagement. Actually, there are jobs that you can't even get unless you are
youth,
below 35.
Imagine.
Well, this is really amazing, and by
it's
the
a really
way,
terrible time to be above 35.
go and fend for yourself.
Hey.
Speaking of which, this is an amazing initiative. In conversation, we're actually bouncing off the fact that there is a national youth policy dialogue forum in a go down. We'll be telling you about the regions.
Yes.
Last week we saw my youth wakionesha matakarua, wakishare agenda zao na matakarua virtually, which is a good start. But remember, guys, just stick around. I think this week we're going to be in Mombasa. And remember, this initiative is actually courtesy of the National Youth Council in collaboration with UNDP and Mkenya Daima. So wherever utapatikana, whether they're talking about education, youth, mambo ya resource, mobilization in partnerships, have something to say. Wakienda Kisumu wasema wanaongea story ya security, ama arts, have something to say, because that policy has to reflect on the issues that the youth are going through kwa ground.
And I absolutely love the fact. Unajua, most of the times wale engaging youth, or rather youth wanasema, hey, wacha tuende tuseme kitu inakuanga mambo za arts.
Peke yake.
Nasema kwani amwezi sema kitu juu ya healthcare. There's someone who said it. And when I was doing my malaria work, one of the things we found out is that because everything comes with data, unakuja hapo kuna, and I was telling guys earlier about history, this communities that come from abroad, and they say, oh, we're going to come and help Kenyans. And to be honest, you think it's coming from a place of, we love Kenyans. No, it's an opportunity to work. And I was telling them, I was sitting with an expert who's telling me, man, I can never get paid like this in America. And she's like, I love Kenya. Na alikuwa ametoka Rwanda, where Rwanda has set policies that if you're going to work here, then you must work with the people.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right? So where will the solutions come from? They have to come from sisi wenyewe. For example, how many years have you been saying story ya HIV na malaria? See, recently ni Mkenya ndio alidiscover vaccine ya malaria. Because it has to be us. Si wenyewe ndio tunajua pali kiatu ina pinch. Wewe umeka kwa hiyo community. Unaangalia, niko na solution ya hii. Lakini umengoja mtu atoke sijui wapi akuje kuuliza, wewe kama unaonaje juu ya hiki? Hakuna mtu anakuuliza.
Na hizo solutions zinakuanga unique to your community.
Exactly.
So you lazima uchangie.
So for the first time, this national youth policy inaenda every region. Na wanasema tunataka vijana mkuje mtuambie kwa politics munatakaje, kwa healthcare munatakaje, kwa mambo ya ufisadi unaona tunaweza deal nayo aje. Ni nyinyi wanataka solutions zao. So ukisikia imekuja area yenu, tafadhali jitokeze usikike. Thank you so much, Jenny, for coming through.
Rebels and reggae heads, start your day the MVP way, where you are the MVP. No negative vibes.